Hey, everyone. So I'm back in Israel, as you can see, and I'd like to share with you a clip of Victor Davis Hanson talking about where we are right now with vis-a-vis Iran and the Middle East strategically. And he talks about what is Trump's calculus, what was the Iranians' calculus, what is the Israelis' calculus. And I want to expand on the points he makes. I kind of want to use what he says as a springboard to add my own 2 cents. So I'm going to be stopping this video at a couple of points to comment. Let's get right to it. Victor Davis Hanson. Here we go.
Years, no one has been able, not even Obama, not Biden, not the Europeans, to negotiate successfully with the Iranian theocracy. Their currency is delay, dissimulation, lie. And so here, tragically, the war was kinetically over in 30 days. Now we're into the high 60s, right? We had all of March and April, 60. Now we're into, well, it's going to be 70 days. And most of that has been this negotiation. And what was it got us? We haven't got anything from them. It's always, let's go to Pakistan, let's do this. And this is what they want. So they have closed the window, the original window, from 8 months to the midterms to 6 and counting. And now we're right at 6 months. And so the time is running out for Donald Trump to have a big enough window to flip over the economy, get gas prices down. Because today, the jobs report was 115,000 new jobs. It was more than twice what the dismal economists said it would be. They're always downplaying what can happen. So the elements of a boom are there. From the other data, the stock market, these people know what they're doing. Supposedly, they're very confident. And there's just two things holding it back, and that's the price of gasoline and the pessimism about what's going to happen with this war, which is augmented or accentuated by this drawn-out negotiation. So at some point, Donald, and why is it drawn out? Because we don't know. There's really only one reason. If you reduce it down, we don't know how many rockets they have.
Okay, he's going to talk about how, because we don't know how many rockets they have, that's what is holding the Americans in this delay pattern that the Iranians have. So we'll get to that in a bit. I'll play the clip from there. But first, I want to comment on what he just said. He's talking about the Iranians have, their whole strategy is delay, because they believe that Trump is under the gun in terms of time because of the midterms. And once they think that Trump is up against the clock and wants this to end quickly, they know that with every day that they delay, they get closer and closer to the chances of survival, and they squeeze Trump. But there's another element there that he doesn't mention, which I want to share with you. So let me just pull this down and add this here. So here's a headline from a couple of days ago, and it's about the upcoming meeting of Trump and President Xi Jinping of China. Okay, the dictator of China. Trump and China's Xi set for talks spanning Iran, nuclear, trade, and AI. Okay, this is from 2 days ago. U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are set to discuss Iran, Taiwan, artificial intelligence, and nuclear weapons as they weigh extending a critical minerals deal, according to U.S. officials previewing Trump's 2-day visit to China this week. The leaders of the world's two largest economies will hold their first face-to-face talks in more than 6 months as they try to stabilize ties strained by trade, the U.S. and the Israeli war with Iran, and other areas of disagreement. Trump is scheduled to arrive in Beijing on Wednesday ahead of talks set to take place Thursday and Friday. It will be his first trip to China since 2017. The U.S. and China are expected to agree to forums to facilitate mutual trade and investment. Talks about buying airplanes. And that's a little bit about trade. And look at this. The Trump-Xi talks are also expected to veer into areas that have long been a source of U.S.-China tension, including Iran, Taiwan, and nuclear arms. China maintains ties with Iran and remains a major consumer of its oil exports. Trump has been leaning on China to use this influence to push Tehran to make a deal with Washington and end the conflict that began when the U.S. and Israel launched strikes on Iran in late February. The Trump administration also has pressed China on its dealings with Russia. Okay. The president has spoken multiple times with the General Secretary Xi Jinping about the topic of Iran and about the topic of Russia, to include the revenue that China provides to both those regimes, as well as dual-use goods, components, and parts, not to mention the potential of weapons exports. I expect the conversation to continue. Okay, so what you see here is that Trump is, it comes right out and says that Trump has been leaning on China to use its influence to push Tehran to make a deal. So what are the Iranians doing now? So what the Iranians are doing now is they are just taunting the Trump administration. Here, take a look at this news item that I just saw. Look at this news item in WANA from today, okay? This is amazing. Look at this. Iran's message to Trump: accept defeat or return to war, which sounds like the most insane thing to say. Accept defeat or return to war. They're taunting him. Iran has effectively blocked every path through which the United States could exit the war, claiming victory. At this point, fulfilling the Islamic Republic's maximum demands is seen as the only way for Trump to escape the Persian Gulf quagmire. Accepting Iran's authority over the Strait of Hormuz, ending the war on all fronts, dismantling U.S. military bases across the region, paying reparations, and recognizing Iran's nuclear rights. This is the most maximalist statement. Since the White House views these conditions as an outright defeat, it continues to resist accepting them. This seems to be insane. But look at this statement down here. That leaves only one possible outcome: return to war, because the issue is that the current ceasefire itself is portrayed as the result of America's defeat on the battlefield. Look at that. It's wild. Iran had previously warned that if war were imposed on it, Tehran would not allow the other side to end it whenever they wished. What are they doing here? It seems suicidal. They're taunting him, saying the only solution is to go back to war, and you think you can, just because you started the war, you can end it. You can't end it whenever you want. We're still going to fight. We're still at war. Why are they taunting Trump? Because they know that Trump wants a deal and doesn't want there to be kinetic action going on while he's visiting Xi Jinping. It will make that the dynamics of that visit with Xi Jinping will be much more difficult for Trump if there's kinetic action going on, or at least that's how the Iranians are reading the room. And I think it's a good read of Trump's behavior and what Trump has been doing. He's been saying he's pressuring the Chinese to help. It'd be very hard to argue with Xi Jinping that he wants him to make a deal and make it part of some other dealings he has with China if he's bombing while he's there. So because they know that Trump isn't going to attack now, it's a perfect time to taunt him and make him look weak. So that's what I think that they're doing now. And you put that together with this issue of the midterms that Victor Davis Hanson brings up, and the delay tactics. They see this as a real opening for them to survive. All right, let's go back to Victor Davis Hanson now. So he had just brought up the fact that the big issue for the Americans that's holding them back is we don't know how many rockets they have. I'm going to let him flesh out that point a little bit more, and then I'll stop the video again and comment.
By that I mean we have 800 Apaches and Warthogs that can be in the skies over the Gulf. They can destroy all the PT boats. They can destroy all the port facilities in a few hours. They can stop, in other words, the Iran ability to harass shipping. But they don't know how many missiles or drones they have. And if they are being replenished through the Caspian Sea route or rail or smuggled in along the border, I doubt very many are getting through. But that means...
Now, there are real rumors out there. There's a lot of information coming out that there's smuggling going on. It's coming from two directions, from the Caspian and also through Pakistan over to the Iranian regime, and that they are somehow replenishing weapons. And the source of that would probably be China, who, based on what I just told you, China has an interest in using this current tight spot that Trump is in, that Trump has painted himself into, to try to squeeze him. And emboldening the Iranian regime more is a good way to squeeze Trump and have him come in weaker to the meeting in Beijing. Let's see what else Victor Davis has to say here.
That as long as you read Maybe they have 1,000. So they are sending messages to our negotiators that's saying, we have the ability, if you take us down, to destroy the Gulf oil industries, their desalination plants, their distillery, all that. And that's holding us back. And so they just draw it out and draw it out at some point. And then Donald Trump replies on their recent attacks you mentioned on the tankers. He then uses kinetic injury, and he attacks certain facilities in Iran, and he attacks tankers that try to break through. And then he says it's a love tap because he's under a deadline, and he's got all of the Republican congressmen, the Republican Senate, the MAGA people, they're all saying we were doing so well, and then the war came. And if you can finish it, there's a good article, I think it's in American Greatness Day by Fred Fleitz. He's a very smart guy. And he argues that we've done so much damage to Iran and the nuclear industrial military complex, it would take them years to recover. And at any time that we surveilled these mountain hideouts of the enriched uranium, they were to be redeveloped, we could just do what we did last June and hit them. But more importantly, we could leave some residual forces that had that ability, or the bases in the Gulf, and then go home. And then that's his argument. But I don't know the effect of that on the Iranians, the Iranian resistance movement. People are very disappointed because the Iranian resistance has not come up again. And if they were to rise up, you get the impression that all bets would be off the table, that U.S. air cover would start to help them. If they're able to send...
Okay, this is not exactly a fair point to the Iranian people, saying that, saying people are disappointed in them, that they haven't come out into the streets. There could be U.S. air cover to support them. Let's remember that President Trump has decided to negotiate and has been open that he wants to make a deal with these criminals like Ghalibaf and Vaidi, or he's the head of IRGC. He's not really in the negotiation, but people like Abbas Araghchi. We're talking about the regime. Trump keeps saying the regime has changed. The Iranian people know that it has not. And this means preserving the regime. They're not going to step out into the street if Trump is going to stab them in the back and make a deal with these guys and keep them in power. I'm not saying that Trump will. I'm not saying I suspect he actually will. But as long as that's what he's signaling out there, the Iranian people aren't sure that that America has their back to bring down the regime. So not such a fair point.
Drones into Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps roadblocks and checkpoints, and they are. You can imagine if they were unleashed, they could do a lot of damage and help the resistance. So I think Trump thought the resistance would be more active at this point, and they need to be armed. So he's in a deadlock, and Israel, as to your question, Israel is right next to Iran, and it's vulnerable. It's only got 10.5 million people. The United States is 340 million people, and it's far away. So we have different geopolitical assessments of its risk. And it's also got to be very, very careful, because in the United States, one of the reasons that has driven down Israeli popularity is this left-wing meme, and then amplified by Tucker Carlson and the rest, that Netanyahu dragged Trump into the war. So if Trump starts to say, our interests are not exactly alike, and we've done so much damage together, they won't come back. And Israel says, yeah, but you're leaving us with a wounded bear in a cave. And the first thing he does is going to come out at us or the Gulf. But Netanyahu has to avoid the idea that he was trying to pull Trump back in. So they have to be, and this is all coming from, I must note, from the Israeli press. It's not coming from Netanyahu. So we'll see what happens, but
hold on. So that is a very important point. That once Iran is a wounded bear, the people, the countries that are most at risk from that are the Israelis, and then he threw in and the Gulf. But he was talking about it from the Israeli calculus. That yes, Israel's interests and the United States' interests are not 100% aligned, but understand that this is the same thinking going on right now in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Oman, in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, where they're saying, okay, listen, Trump, you decided to go ahead and blow this whole place up on February 28th. If you don't finish the job and you leave us with an angry, wounded bear, you leave the Iranian regime intact, they're going to rebuild. We're the ones who were on the front lines of that. We're the ones who get attacked. This brings us back to the rocket attack issue when he was talking about how we don't know how many rockets they have and they could disrupt. They can still take out the oil refineries and the other assets, the other oil related assets of the Gulf states with their rockets. And this is why, even though their navy's been destroyed, they can still keep the Straits of Hormuz closed, because they have these rocket launchers in the hills along the banks of the Strait of Hormuz, and they have rockets pointed right across the strait at those Gulf states. So both from the Israelis' perspective and the Gulf states' perspective, they're looking at America saying, wait a second, are you going to leave us in a cave with a wounded bear, to use Victor Davis Hanson's analogy? So there you can see that the strategy is really moving in a few different directions here. But again, you read the Iranians, you read their strategy. They see Trump not wanting to go kinetic, wanting to make a deal with China, brokering a deal with Iran, and the Iranian people looking at Trump wanting to broker a deal with these gangsters and saying, hey, wait a second, do you have our back? So this is a real moment of truth for Trump. Simultaneously, again, just to sum up, you have the Gulf states and Israel saying, are you going to leave us with a wounded bear? Do you have our back? Are you going to finish the job, or are you going to back out and come to some compromise that leaves the evil regime intact? You have them all worrying, and you have the Iranian people also worrying. Wait a second, is it safe for us to go out and protest? Will America have our back if they're trying to cut a deal with the same people who slaughter us? So that's kind of the bind that we're in, because Trump wants a deal quickly. He doesn't want to go to China with kinetic action going on, and meanwhile the Iranians are taunting him. So that's how I see that's kind of my expansion on some of Victor Davis Hanson's points, and how I see this this current moment that we're in here. Let's watch a couple more minutes of him.
The problem would be not if a J.D. Vance necessarily or Marco Rubio were president, next president. That would be 6 years of vigilance. And they would act. I think even Vance would. But if you get an AOC or a Pete Buttigieg or Newsom, they wouldn't. They've all dismissed Israel. I've never seen, as a excursus, I've never seen anything like this. My friend Megyn Kelly the other day, in a passionate interview, which went viral because the people were juxtaposing it. When I was on her program last summer, she was very adamant about the necessity of the bombing to take away the nuclear threat. And then she made some really good points about Islam. And I mean, going back through 5 or 6 administration, who are the people who blew up our Tanzania, our Kenya embassies, our Beirut embassies, our Marine barracks? Who were the ones that sending shape charge to blow up Americans? Who was the panty bomber, whatever we call it, underwear bomber, who that killed people at Fort Hood, who killed people at San Bernardino, who killed people in a nightclub, who did 9/11? Who are those?
USS Cole, right? The hole in the
USS Cole.
side,
We know who. It's not Jewish terrorists. It's Islam.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. So the question is, does Trump know that? Is that on the top of his mind? I keep coming back to the fact that Trump was saying from the beginning that he doesn't want to leave this problem for another president. He doesn't want to be another Obama. So I just, every time I look at this and see, hey, the Iranians are playing him, they're going to survive, he's not going to get his deal, or I'm worried that he's going to prop up the regime that's there, which it looks like he's trying to do, but at the same time, he keeps reminding us that he understands who the regime is and the necessity of getting rid of them. So it remains to be seen what happens. Please drop a comment. Let me know what you thought of this video, especially of the style of interrupting at various points rather than playing the whole clip through. Let me know, because I'm experimenting with different ways of analyzing these clips. and there are pros and cons. So your opinion is important to me. I want to thank you all for helping the channel grow. Make sure you're subscribed, and make sure you're also subscribed to the links in the description of this video to get to Israel365news.com. Go there, and Israel 365 News newsletter, and Israel 365 Action newsletter, and the Israel 365 News YouTube channel. Make sure that you're getting all of the content we are putting out. All right, God bless. We'll be back with more soon.